This video is phase 2 of Project DC, Project Downcountry, where I see if I can make a downcountry bike, in this case a transition spur, go as fast as a cross-country race bike, a Niner RKT9 RDO, just by changing out the wheel set. Why would I want to do this? Well, I would love to have a bike that's really versatile that could do both with just a wheel swap. The transition spur is mind-blowingly capable on rougher terrain when I go to the mountains. The travel numbers of 120 mil travel front and rear don't really tell the story of how capable that bike is. It's a magical bike, it really is. But can it be as fast as a cross-country bike? So phase 1, I did time trials on the Niner for about 3 or 4 weeks worth of time trialing, and then switched over, did the same thing on the transition spur. If you haven't watched that video, I'll link it in the description below, but I'll recap it and say that the Niner RKT9, the times were as slow as 37:57 and as fast as 37:22. And I did 5 time trials over that time span. And then on the transition spur, the fastest time was 36:55, the slowest was 37:20. Now, as I stated in the first video, I had done a cyclocross race weekend between doing the time trials on the RKT9 and doing them on the spur, and I started the spur about 2 weeks afterwards, and my body responds pretty well to racing into shape. And so I believe that had some play into the numbers of the transition spur. Someone asked me if I could do some averages, so I did. So as you can see here on the screen, the average for the RKT9 was 37:39, and then the average for the transition spur was 37:06. Now, if you look at the average heart rates, it's actually higher on the transition spur. The power was also higher. The normalized power was 230 on the spur versus 222 on the RKT9. And then the average, that was normalized power, average power 199 versus 192. So I was definitely pushing harder. Was it fitness? Probably. That was part of it. Heart rate being higher. You know, I do feel like I have to push the spur a little bit more. The bike's 1.5 pounds heavier. The course that I'm doing is about 600 feet of climbing for the course, which, as you can see, takes about 37 minutes to do. So it's not like a huge amount of climbing, but it's definitely not flat. And so that 1.5 pound weight difference, I do have to push it harder. Does that play into it? I don't know. It seems like the fitness gain was probably, again, playing into the fact that the spur was faster when I did that week of time trialing. Needless to say, the spur was really fast. Whether or not it beats the Niner RKT9 at the end of the day when this project is all over, that's to be seen. However, I do know that the bike is incredibly fast for being as capable as it is for an all-arounder. Now let's talk about phase 2, where I'm basically repeating the whole cycle. Time trials on the RKT9 for 3 weeks, rest, and then time trials on the spur. Now, I did do a full week of rest before doing the time trials on the RKT9. After the first week of time trialing, I actually had an endurance race, and then I had 2 more weeks of time trialing. I'm actually going to repeat the same thing for the spur. So coming up on a week of rest, and then I'm going to do 1 week of time trialing, have a race, and then 2 more weeks of time trialing. So very similar patterns. Now, I thought about waiting until I did the phase with the spur and then making a video, but that would have been, I think, too long of a time stretch. So this is kind of halfway through phase 2, and I'm going to share with you the results of the RKT9, because the RKT9 was definitely making a comeback. So let's look at those numbers. All right, so I'll leave the time trial results of the spur above. So going into phase 2, I only did 1 time trial the first week. I waited till later on the week and came out of the gate swinging on the RKT9 with a 36:43, fastest time ever. And then the next week, you could say I was consistent. 36:41, 2 seconds off. 36:53 for the second time trial that week. Now, let me talk about what's been happening on the trails. So up until now, the trail conditions have been pretty similar. We have, in the springtime, these leaves that fall. Yes, I said that right, leaves that fall in the spring, the new leaves coming on the trees push off the old leaves, and it's this small waxy leaf that covers the trail in some sections. And so you have to be really cautious around the corners. Some of the corners, you have to creep around them. In addition to that, we have these sweet gum seeds. They're actually little golf balls. It's like literally like riding on golf balls, and they cover some corners. So you do have to be careful. And that started happening when probably like the second week on the RKT9. So I was actually pretty surprised that some of these times were still pretty fast. So the 36:53, and then going into the last week, which I just finished, this week I was tired. The 37:02, in fact, was a much better time than I thought it would be because I was really tired. And then the 37:27, I almost didn't even do the time trial because I got a really, really bad night's sleep. I'm talking like 3 hours of sleep where I normally get like 7.5. Those two times are a little bit of an asterisk next to them because I was pretty tired that week. So the ones before it, I think, were pretty good to go by. And also those leaves and the seeds that cover the trails just kept getting worse and worse. Now I do think they've stopped falling, so they should start to get pushed off the trail. So when I get back out there on the spur, they'll still be there, but they'll get kind of, you know, crunched down and pushed off. So it shouldn't be too bad. So I feel like I'm just not working quite as hard, even though I have to be more cautious on the RKT9 in terms of the steeper head angle going around the corners, because if you start to lose the front end with a steep head angle bike, it's harder to recover. So you could say that you're less likely to crash on a bike with a slacker head angle like the transition spur. So that's a whole nother topic, but I just want to throw that out there. So those are the times from phase 2, from the first set of time trials on the RKT9. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to make this halfway phase 2 video because I didn't want to go too long between videos in Project DC. The last thing that I'll mention before I wrap up this video is based on a few comments that I've gotten about possibly taking out the dropper post of the transition spur to make it lighter, because the Niner RKT9 RDO has a carbon rigid post, and that's about a half-pound weight difference. I'm not going to do that, and here's why. The whole nature of this project is to see if I can make a transition spur or similar downcountry bike be versatile to where I can quickly switch between cross-country mode and trail mode with a wheel swap. To change out a dropper post, unless I were to invest in a cable-less one, it would take a long time to change out that dropper post. You've got to take out the cranks, you've got to reroute the cable. I want to take 15 minutes to change out a dropper post, especially putting it back in. Taking it out would be a lot simpler, of course, but putting it back in, taking out the cranks and all that. So, you know, again, by nature of this project, having a versatile bike, that's not an option for me. So stay tuned for the final video of Project DC in terms of the time trial results, and then I'll make kind of an ending video of this project to just talk about kind of my thoughts. Depending on which one wins, what are my thoughts between these two styles of bikes, because I think a lot of people are trying to make that decision between these two style bikes. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you liked it, if you like this project, give it a thumbs up for me. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so you can see future videos that I put out of Project DC and all other things mountain biking and some gravel. So that'll do it for this one. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.